Brian K. Morris is one of the most influential writers in the new pulp genre. He's the author of The Terrors, and I sat down with him last week at Pulp Fest and had a nice conversation with him where we talked about writing, giving out some information to new writers, and we delved into a little bit of Brian's past. So stick around for this episode of The Writer's Journey where you can meet Brian K. Morris. Brian K. Morris,
Yes.
the author of The Terrors
Yes.
and Santa Stein.
Yes.
And what else? What you got coming up?
Oh, what I've got coming up right now is a kind of secret project I'm doing for another publisher. But if you like westerns and horror, you're going to be very, very pleased. Also, we are working on a sequel to The Terrors. We're calling it The Terrors 2. Real good marketing, folks. We pay people for this. And also, it's also called From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay.
And if you like a steady diet of mummies and magic, this is going to be a good book for you too. Also, we're doing spin-off books featuring the origins of the Cobalt Scarab and the Terror Twins. Plus, we've got all kinds of other, hopefully, good ideas coming down the pike. So one will never have to worry that I will sit idle at the keyboard.
So now you're going to sit down and write. What makes you motivated to write?
Well, when I'm in a flippant mood, I say the monthly stipend from Amazon that I keep getting. But actually, I am to the point now where I'm almost compelled to write. I've been doing this most of my life in one form or another, starting with like making up stories for my imaginary friends when I'm 3, all the way through trying to entertain myself while writing, documents in in grade school and up. And now a lot of it is to challenge myself to see whether I can write something like an unfamiliar genre to me. For instance, I got through co-writing a screenplay which I had never done successfully before.
Okay.
And not only that, it was a romantic comedy, which is way out of my wheelhouse, but it turned out very, very well.
So you try to stretch yourself, stretch your imagination,
Exactly.
see where you can go,
Yeah.
and get out of your comfort zone.
Exactly. And I think being uncomfortable when I create helps me a lot. And also the challenge, because I'm not in competition with any other writer except for me. And I always want to make each story better than the last, of course. And I also want to make sure that I have the versatility, so to speak, that I can write convincingly in other genres in case I just get a bug to do it one day.
So are there days you don't want to write? You feel like you just don't want to do it, but you turn around and you do write? Or what's your process when it comes to, there are a lot of writers out there in the world who don't write because they don't feel motivated. So what motivates you to sit down besides the stipend from Amazon?
Yeah.
What makes
Yes.
you want to sit down and write? I mean, you're a born storyteller.
Thank you.
What makes you want to get in front of the keyboard and get to work?
Well, one, aside from the compulsion, is the fact that I do treat my writing as a business. And there were times when I was punching a clock where, no, I didn't want to go into work, but I did it anyway. I just have to remind myself, though, even though I'm working for myself other than someone else, and the boss is still an idiot, that I want to keep producing. This is a job, and I do it whether I want to do it or not. The only constraint I have most of the time is time, when outside influences, such as like real life concerns, impinge upon my writing time. Otherwise, I give myself a minimum of words per day, and if I make it, yay. If I don't make it, then I promise myself I'll do better tomorrow.
Okay. So if you start to write,
Yes.
and you don't feel the words coming out,
Mhm.
you continue to write, you continue to create,
Mhm.
and then go back later and take a look and see what you have. I'm sure, like all writers, you've
Yeah.
written stuff and they go, "Oh, this is just not going to work for me,"
Right.
and you get rid of it, and then you may cut and paste, put it someplace else
Yeah.
later because you never know you
Yeah.
might need it.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, um, on the days you don't want to write,
Mm.
or someone, for instance, someone tells you, I'm afraid to write. I don't want to write.
Hmm.
I don't feel motivated to write. Well, what
Right.
would you say to them?
I resist the urge to go all General Patton on them, but I also tell people that, like you said, I force myself to write so that I come up with something and I can either edit it later and make it fit into what I'm working on, or I'll cut it out, put it aside, and maybe it'll germinate another idea down the road, or I'll just throw it away and start all over because all I've really wasted is time. And I figure even the practice of writing something, anything, still makes me a better writer than when I started.
And a lot of people who have the ambition of being a writer,
Mm-hmm.
there's different reasons they don't write. They're scared.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think they're talented enough.
Right.
They don't think they have the right professional training. I know when I first started,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a lot of training.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people who've watched my show know that I don't. My first book's not in print anymore because
Mm-hmm.
it's not as good as the stuff I'm writing
Right.
now.
Right.
So, what's your advice to them to find those resources to become a good writer?
Write anyway, because, like I said, you can toss it out if need be. And if you're worried, like say you don't think you're good enough, how will you know until you put something down in ones and zeros or on paper
Right.
and let somebody else see it? Or if if you just lack the courage to put yourself out, because a lot of times in your writing you're going to reveal a lot about yourself, your deepest self. And some people may be a little more private than I am, or you are.
True.
Yeah, that maybe they're just writing for their own amusement, and all of which is fine. You don't have to write for money. Although if you're a mercenary like I am, hi gang, that you write anyway. And I'm mostly self-taught. I went through high school, I went through college, had the standard English tests, standard rhetoric lessons, but a lot of what I've picked up about writing has come from study, from reading books on writing, from reading magazines on writing, and now we've evolved into like listening to podcasts, watching YouTube, to
Doing shows like
doing
this.
shows like this. Exactly, you can learn a lot, people, and uh, just making the words come out. And there will be times when you feel the words coming out, and it will be uh, just such a joyous release that the words are just flowing. And either way, you're going to have to edit this stuff anyway.
Right.
So you're going to edit with the idea that, maybe we'll make it more concise. Maybe we need to expand on it, or maybe we just need to make sure that all the punctuation and spelling is right. But you're going to go back through it again. And so you might as well just get it out in the first place. Plus, nobody has to read that first draft but the person writing it.
Right.
And I'd say it's probably a safe estimation that probably 95% of all first drafts stink. That they are imperfect, that they're not what you want other people to see. And so it's your job then to embrace the art of editing, the
Right. Because
art of the rewrite.
that's where writing really, really happens. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
getting that first draft out is very important. But once you go back and you start doing your edit and you start tightening up and you
Right.
start trimming
Mm-hmm.
that story, that's when the real writing begins. And a lot of people are afraid of it. Now we're doing a show this weekend,
Yes, we are.
and we have a lot of people sometimes come up to the show and they
Yeah.
tell us, I've written a book, but I'm just afraid. I don't know if it's any good. I
Yeah.
don't know what do I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it a lot. I'm sure you do, or people who say I'm working on the first draft, but I go back and I edit all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my advice is one thing. What's your advice?
My advice, like for over editing,
Yeah.
not getting stuck in the editing phase, are get what we call beta readers. And those are people who you approach, who you want to have somebody that will judge the work and not the writer. I don't want somebody coming back and saying, well, Brian, I didn't like this story because your shirts are too loud. But you want somebody to say, I didn't like the main character. I didn't like the pacing. Something, and even if they aren't able to articulate exactly what it is, if they can point you in the right direction of what their caveat was, and also to tell you what worked. I loved the heroine. This was a clever idea for the antagonist to try to destroy the world or whatever. Or I was on my backside laughing through the whole thing, hopefully intentionally. But get people who will critique the work. And when I handle my beta readers, I always tell them, I want you to be totally unconcerned with my feelings, because we have to look at all of our writing, all of our creativity as a product, which sounds very cold and mechanical, I know, but eventually we are going to, or most of us will, put this thing out into the open to be published, to be read, to be purchased. And you don't want to like send a car out with only half the bolts and nuts in it. You want to make sure the thing is as good as you can make it. And yes, editing is an imperfect art, but you still need to embrace that. And I actually look forward to it now, because this means I am like sanding off the rough bits. I am making it much better for other people to read so that they can enjoy it and in turn shower me with praise, which helps my bloated ego like no tomorrow.
So and it's great for a new writer
Right.
to hand their manuscript to a friend
Mhm.
or a parent or a spouse.
Right.
But in most cases, a spouse, unless it's my wife, um, is going to sugarcoat it for you.
Could
They're
be.
not going to tell you exactly what they think.
Mhm.
And you need to let people that's going to give you an
Right.
objection
Exactly.
to what you're writing, and so it's like challenge you as a
Yeah.
writer.
Yeah.
Um, did you have problems like that when you first started writing? Did someone sugarcoat it for you? Did it feel like they were sugarcoating it for you?
Um, some of my beta readers were. Um, that I would give them a story or a piece of a manuscript, and some say, "Yeah, this is great." That doesn't teach you anything. But if they say, "I really liked this," or "I really didn't like that," that's the stuff that helps you. And yeah, you know what? Nobody wants to hear that you didn't get it right on the first try or the 15th, but it's a process. And it's like football. You keep running the play till you get it right. Now, you talk about people, though, who don't give a poop about your feelings. My wife edited one of my books. She's in fact my main editor, but she edited one of my books and she came back with, was chapter 39 supposed to make sense? So, that's also the sort of thing that keeps you grounded too, in case you start thinking you're the next John Steinbeck or something.
Right,
So,
and I'm sure you had debates about what's in the book. My wife and
yes,
I, when she edits my work, we
yes,
have a lot of debates about the story.
we do too. My wife Cookie and I always have some bone of contention, but I also believe that if I can't defend it, then I need to change it whether I want to or not. And some things where I think one danger that a lot of newer writers uh, give themselves is that we know everything about the character, we know everything about the situation as the writer, but we don't always put it on the paper. We always just kind of assume subconsciously that the reader will pick up on what we're thinking. And you have to be very careful about showing what is going on, sharing what you know with the reader in as painless a manner as possible, because exposition can really turn some readers off when it crosses the line from here's this little fragment you need to know and goes into full-blown info dump.
Right,
Yeah, so
and I'm guilty of that.
ditto.
And a lot of writers are,
Yeah,
but that's where your editing comes in,
right.
to try to trim that down and try to find other places to put all the other little details,
Hmm.
maybe later in the story,
Right.
that'll help your reader understand who your character is.
Or to foreshadow.
Yeah.
The playwright Henrik Ibsen has a famous thing about, if you show a person pulling a gun out of their pocket in Act 3 of your play, you better have shown them putting that gun into their pocket in Act 1. And that is kind of like an Easter egg that rewards the reader for paying attention. You do need an editor. In fact, you probably need more than one editor, because some editors are specialized in, like, punctuation and spelling, and others are what we call developmental editors. Like, here's a character, why did you put him here? They serve no purpose, or why don't you expand this part? Why don't you give a little more explanation on this? They help you kind of massage the manuscript into shape. And there are even um, uh, sensitivity editors that make sure that if you are sensitive to the feelings of others, that you do not inadvertently offend them. So there are all different manners of editors, all different levels of skill, and it's up to the writer to try to find them.
And speaking of characters that don't need to be in the story,
Right.
sometimes you need a character, a bellboy or a taxi
Right.
driver,
Right.
but you don't have to go into the history of who those people are. You don't even have to give them a name,
Right.
not even a description. It's taxi driver. Most people know what taxi drivers
Right.
are. But a lot of younger writers or new writers will take a page and a half to describe this taxi driver that you'll never see again the rest of the story.
Right.
And that leads the reader to believe that I'm going to see this taxi driver later.
Yes, they're more important than they really are. But sometimes, and this is something I just picked up in the last few years, that a lot of characters, even more important ones, it's not always important to go into detail about, say, their height, their weight, even their ethnicity, because this gives the reader an opportunity to kind of envision themselves in that particular role. So, like giving just the barest of a description, despite, whatever, your skin tone may be, somebody can look at that and go, that could be me. That could be me doing this heroic stuff. So
Right.
but it's a balancing act depending on what kind of story you're telling and the needs of the genre. Some genres require more more detail than others. So, and it's up to the reader to learn what tropes and traditions there are in each form of writing. So a lot of this is like self-education. We both have gone through this where we're watching YouTube videos on writing, even though we are published writers.
Right.
But we're always still trying to learn more, because I figure the day that I stop learning is the day I need to quit.
Okay. Speaking of learning, so
Yeah.
someone comes up to you and asks you, "What do I do to become you?"
Yeah.
What are your top 5 things you would tell someone?
Oh, read a lot. And in fact, read outside of the genre of interest you have. For instance, if you want to write hard science fiction, read romance. So that gives you a more emotional edge to your writing. Um, Read a lot. Keep the rules of grammar in mind. Um, Educate yourself, not just about writing, but about the genre you're working in. The If you're submitting to a magazine or a publisher, learn about the company. Some companies won't accept unagented submissions. I mean, you have to have an agent to represent you,
Right.
or some people just don't take submissions at all. Some have a tiny window, which point they will entertain submissions. So learn about the industry, learn about self publishing or traditional publishing, and the needs of the market, basically. See, I'm up to 3 now, I think. Um, I would say always be ready to learn. Because I've been a full time writer for 13 years as we're recording this, and I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what I need to know. They always say that the wisest man is the one who knows how little he knows.
Yeah.
And as Warren Murphy said, one of my writing idols, a guy who co-created an adventure series called The Destroyer, comb your hair. I
Yeah.
usually get that reaction when I say that. He had a website when I was writing my first book that it was all like, make sure you get all your words on the paper and comb your hair. Now you get to the editing part. Be sure to go over everything, read it out loud, and comb your hair. So combing your hair, I guess, is more important than apparently I take it. So
Right. I hope you come back next week for part 2 of my conversation with Brian K. Morris. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you soon.